tonight, General McMaster fires Rich Higgins and what it means for American national security. What an honor and privilege it is to have back on the program John Guandolo, a former FBI agent, combat veteran Marine, and now the president of Understanding the Threat. John, welcome back to the Glazoff Gang.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me, Jamie.
John, really troubling developments. This national security advisor, McMaster, I mean, he just got rid of a hero, such a smart, wise man that wrote a memo that was just telling it like it is. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to just preview when we talk about the national security advisor of the president, General McMaster, we're talking about an individual who, when discussing the jihadi threat, the terrorist threat, says that they use an irreligious view of religion, a made-up or extreme view of religion. He won't even use the word Islam to perpetrate violence. And that's the first piece. So he clearly not only doesn't understand the threat, he's putting forth a narrative that's untrue. Now, the reason that this is such, the firing of Richard Higgins is so significant is because Richard Higgins is the one guy inside the national security apparatus that has the deepest understanding of the Islamic threat, how they are working directly with the hard left Marxists, and how inside the government this is actually unfolding and how it's actually working. And he was trying to, in as clear a language as he could, articulate that threat, because this is, in my opinion, and clearly in his opinion, this is the game. This is the ball game. They are trying to rip apart the people inside the National Security Council who understand this marriage, what we call the red-green axis. Hard-left Marxists, red, the Islamists, the jihadis, the green, how they're working together. And Rich Higgins isn't the first guy, but he, in my opinion, is the most important guy that's been fired. And I believe this is the most telling firing that we have seen in this administration. And I believe it puts McMaster, earlier, Understanding the Threat has said he's unfit for duty. In my opinion, he is now standing in the enemy camp because he is refusing to fire people from the Obama administration who are clearly statists and, in many cases, in my opinion, Marxists, who are pushing for an agenda that is counter to the facts and is counter to the national security of the United States.
John, this is so tragic because, you know, when I was reading Higgins's, you know, the description of Higgins's memo, I mean, he's just telling it like it is about the leftist alliance with the Islamic forces, about, you know, the deep state and the globalists. All of this is a reality, and how much they need America out of the way, how much they need people and presidents like Trump out of the way. And McMaster gets rid of Higgins, whereas somebody like Higgins should actually be national security advisor. Let me ask you this. McMaster, you would think that McMaster would be serving in a Hillary administration or in an Obama administration. What is this guy doing? How did this happen?
Well, I just want to remind your viewers of a conversation that we've had briefly before on your show, is that I was working with the Trump administration prior to the election and then after the election, and providing some information on people, both Muslims and non-Muslims, that were inside the administration that were a problem. And one of the two individuals that were vetting national security positions for Mr. Trump turned out to be a self-professed Christian conservative who was actually batting for the other team. In other words, Muslim Brotherhood sympathizer, and certainly standing more on the side of the hard left Marxists than on the side of the patriots that elected Mr. Trump. And so as we look at how this all is coming about, I'm looking at social media, and you have people saying, you know, they're reading the article in the Atlantic about Mr. Richard Higgins and saying, oh, you know, another crackpot, claiming there's this big conspiracy. This is real. And I've had personal experience in helping punt we were able to get that individual, one of the two individuals vetting national security positions for the president, get him out of there by going to senior members of the Trump administration and share with them, look, this is what's going on. But so there is, in my opinion, and I mean this very sincerely, a real civil war going on in the White House between Mr. Trump and the people loyal to him and others around him that are establishment people that do not want him to succeed. And this is real. And I am telling you, Richard Higgins, more than anyone else in that White House, understands the Islamic threat, understands the hard left Marxist threat, how they're married. And this was clearly an operation to get him out of there. And McMaster did it. And remember, when the Muslim Brotherhood says civilization jihad by our hands, they get our leaders to do their bidding for them, and it doesn't matter whether the leaders know it or not. But I think General McMaster has proven that he does not understand the threat, and he is siding with the Muslim Brotherhood and their allies.
Scary stuff, John. Something very much interests me. I think Higgins, well, I mean, we know that Higgins poses such a threat to the enemy. And in the article in the Atlantic, they say that Higgins had been pushing for the declassification of Presidential Study Directive 11, a classified report produced in 2010 by the Obama administration. I think that poses a great threat to the left. Can you tell us about this classified report and why it's so important to have it declassified?
Well, I can just tell you from what I know of reporting about Directive 11, and that is this, that the topic is the Obama administration's interaction with the Muslim Brotherhood and how they came to critical decision-making on how they would deal with them and work with them. And I think the reason that this is such a threat is because I believe this is going to demonstrate that the Obama administration treated the Muslim Brotherhood as an ally and somebody they were going to work with. The Muslim Brotherhood is an organization whose bylaws state their bylaws clearly state that the purpose for their existence is to impose Sharia on the planet, and their bylaws state that they must fight the enemies and tyrants, the enemies of Allah, in order to establish an Islamic State. The exact same objective as ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And I think that's why it's a threat, because the truth is always a threat to people that don't possess it.
Oh, it would be so good if they could declassify that directive. John, so look, Stephen Coughlin, what a hero. He, has completely documented in his masterpiece, Catastrophic Failure. He's documented how, the Muslim Brotherhood is actually framing the foreign policy of the United States now. And Higgins, in this memo and in his main arguments, is showing the national security officials are prohibited from developing a factual understanding of the Islamic threat and its doctrines. And this is exactly what Coughlin has documented as well in terms of the whole government. So, and this is exactly what you do, because you want the government and our society and our culture to return to understanding the threat. So, to conclude here, Higgins is arguing for us returning to being able to making a threat assessment, and McMaster got rid of him.
That's correct. And if I can, that is a wonderful point you just made, bringing Stephen Coughlin and his work into this discussion. When I was recruited out of the FBI at the end of 2008 by the Department of Defense, I briefed a number of 3- and 4-star generals and admirals. I briefed the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, the Intelligence Committee, the Homeland Security Committee, and of just those people, I also briefed a number, dozens and dozens of members of Congress, and I never briefed anyone that understood the threat. Never once. They all, when the briefing was over, their jaws were out. They were like, how is this possible? We don't know this. And the answer is because the enemy intends to win this war in the information realm. They intend to control the narrative, to control the information flow, and they do it primarily to make sure the very people who need to know this information to do their job and protect the country don't do it. How they do that is the much longer story that has been cataloged by Understanding the Threat, by Stephen Coughlin, and is being articulated by Richard Higgins. And instead of being promoted, he's being fired. Stephen Coughlin could be the National Security Advisor to the President. He could be the Deputy Secretary of Defense and actually do what professionals do. You got to know the enemy before you can target and destroy the enemy. And we're not doing it, and it's 16 years after 9/11.
And John, so just to crystallize who McMaster is, so this is the National Security Advisor. So when ISIS is blatantly telling us that we are motivated and inspired and find sanctioning for what we do because of what's in the Quran and in the Hadith, and they're constantly quoting the surahs, and they're inspired and sanctioned by Surah 9.5 and 9.29 and 47.4. And McMaster's answer is, no, no, no. It's global warming, it's unemployment, and they just need a hug. He's one of those guys, right?
He certainly is. I mean, he's looking at it strictly from the violent perspective. And this war, as we have said, as Mr. Coughlin articulates, and as Mr. Higgins clearly understands, this is a war that's much more a counterintelligence and espionage matter than it is a terrorism matter. This is about political warfare, influence operations, intelligence gathering, and the suit-wearing jihadis and the hard left Marxists that support them, which we have documented and have been documented by others, is the threat. And right now, the pinnacle of the battle is happening inside the White House. And that's why I say this war's Gettysburg. If we lose the battle in the White House, I believe we might not recover from it.
But John, McMaster's quite busy. Now he also fired Derek Harvey as the senior director for the Middle East, and he was apparently a Bannon ally and also a good guy, correct?
That's right. He also fired Tara Dahl, another woman inside there who understands the problems, understands, very sharp, very conservative, very patriotic. And he fired her. I mean, this is very interesting. It is a targeted purge by McMaster inside the national security realm. This is dangerous. This is subversive, and I believe it's revolutionary.
Okay, John, before we go, for all the Glazov gang viewers watching this and they're getting upset, they want to get involved, what can they do and how can they do it through you? Tell them how they can find you and what we need to do.
Well, certainly, I think they should support you, the Glazov gang.
That's very important.
Yeah, subscribe to your YouTube channel, subscribe to all your stuff for sure, follow you on Twitter. But for Understanding the Threat, I would say go to our website, understandingthethreat.com. Chris Gobbets is our vice president. He's the guy that went undercover at CARE in 2008, Hamas in the United States. You've had him on. His book, Muslim Mafia, is on our site. Raising a Jihadi Generation. We have DVDs. We have a resource page with information. We have a YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, UTT_USA. But specifically, go to our resources page and look at what we say under What Can You Do?